I reserved a private room, paid in advance, and sent calendar invites for my anniversary dinner. No one showed. 2 hours later, my cousin tagged everyone in a family night photo at a bistro across town. I didn't respond. I just posted. Reminder, I'm the one who pays mom's utilities and dad's phone bill. The next morning, I canceled every automatic payment. That afternoon, my phone blew up with calls from family. I didn't answer. I, 34M, stared at my phone screen, the calendar invite glowing back at me like a digital slap in the face. Anniversary dinner. Private dining room. Prepaid. Everyone confirmed. Except nobody showed. The reservation was for 7:30. I'd arrived 15 minutes early, wearing the navy suit my wife always said made me look handsome. The hostess led me to the private room I'd booked 3 weeks ago, complete with family-style seating for 12 and a customized menu featuring everyone's favorites. Mom's salmon, dad's prime rib, my sister's vegetarian pasta. Even my cousin's gluten-free dessert option. By 8:15, I was still sitting alone, checking my phone obsessively. No missed calls. No frantic texts about traffic or emergencies. Just silence. The waiter kept asking if I wanted to order appetizers while we waited for the rest of my party. I kept saying 5 more minutes, trying to maintain some dignity while my stomach churned with embarrassment and growing rage. 9:30 rolled around, and I finally told the waiter to cancel everything. The sympathetic look in his eyes made it worse somehow. I paid the cancellation fee, tipped him generously for his patience, and walked out into the cool evening air feeling like the world's biggest fool. That's when my phone buzzed with a notification. Instagram. My cousin had tagged the entire family in a photo. There they were, all of them, crowded around a table at Romano's Bistro across town. My parents, my sister, my wife, my cousin and his girlfriend, even my uncle who supposedly had back problems and rarely went anywhere. They were laughing, raising glasses in a toast, looking like they were having the time of their lives at their impromptu family night. My wife was in the center of the photo, beaming. The woman who'd confirmed our anniversary dinner just that morning while kissing me goodbye. The woman who'd helped me plan the menu and insisted we invite everyone, because family is everything. I drove home in a fog, my mind cycling through a dozen different explanations. Maybe there was some emergency I didn't know about. Maybe someone got the dates mixed up. Maybe this was all some elaborate surprise that would make sense later. But deep down, I knew the truth was much simpler and much worse. They'd forgotten about me entirely. Or worse, they'd chosen to exclude me. When I got home, the house was dark. My wife wasn't back yet, probably still enjoying her family night with everyone except her actual husband. I sat in my kitchen, still wearing my expensive suit, looking at that photo over and over again, counting the faces, recognizing the casual clothes they were wearing. This wasn't a last-minute emergency dinner. This was planned. That's when something inside me shifted. A cold clarity settled over me as I opened my banking app and started scrolling through my automatic payments. Mom's electric bill, $87 monthly. Dad's phone plan, $140 for the family package that included my sister and uncle. Mom's water bill, $53. Dad's internet, $99. My sister's car insurance that I'd been covering since she lost her job 8 months ago, $212. The list went on. Payments I'd set up over the years whenever someone in the family hit a rough patch. Temporary help that had somehow become permanent fixtures in my budget. Money I'd never begrudged because family takes care of family, right? I took a screenshot of that Instagram photo and posted it to my own story with a simple caption. Reminder, I'm the one who pays mom's utilities and dad's phone bill. Then I started canceling payments. Click, click, click. Each cancellation felt like removing a weight from my shoulders. Mom's electricity, dad's phone plan, the car insurance, the internet, the water bill, even the grocery delivery service I'd set up for my parents during the pandemic that they'd never bothered to take over. My wife came home around midnight, smelling like wine and laughter. She found me still sitting in the kitchen, now in sweats, laptop open in front of me. She asked if I'd had a good evening, her voice casual, like she'd genuinely forgotten about our anniversary dinner. When I told her I'd spent 2 hours alone in a private dining room waiting for my family to show up, her face went through a series of expressions. Confusion, then realization, then something that might have been guilt if I was being generous. She started explaining how my cousin had texted everyone about a spontaneous family dinner, and how she'd thought I was working late. and how the wires got crossed somehow. Her words washed over me like white noise. I just nodded and told her I understood, then mentioned that I'd canceled some automatic payments to restructure our budget. She didn't think to ask which payments. The next morning started early. My phone began ringing at 6:30. Dad's number. I let it go to voicemail. Then Mom called. Then my sister. Then my uncle. By noon, I had 17 missed calls and 43 unread text messages. The first voicemail was from Dad, his voice tight with panic. His phone service had been cut off that morning. He'd called the company and they'd told him the account was 3 months behind, which was impossible because I'd always paid it on time. Could there be some mistake? Mom's voicemail came next. The power company had sent a disconnect notice. They were coming to shut off her electricity unless the past due balance was paid immediately. She sounded scared and confused, asking if I knew anything about what was happening. My sister's messages were less polite. She demanded to know why her car insurance had been canceled, especially since she had a job interview that afternoon and needed to drive. Her texts grew increasingly frantic as the morning wore on. But it was my cousin's call that really triggered the avalanche. He'd apparently taken it upon himself to reach out to everyone, trying to figure out what was going on. His voicemail was smug and accusatory. He suggested that maybe I was having some kind of breakdown and that the family should stage an intervention. He reminded me that family doesn't abandon family, and that whatever was wrong could be worked out if I just answered my phone. That last part almost made me laugh. Family doesn't abandon family. Right. By afternoon, the group chat I'd been removed from months ago was apparently buzzing with activity. My wife showed me some of the messages, asking if I wanted her to explain the situation. They were calling me petty. They were saying I was having a midlife crisis. My cousin suggested that maybe my business was failing and I was taking it out on everyone else. My wife asked if I was really going to let Mom's power get shut off over a misunderstanding about dinner plans. The way she said misunderstanding made something hot and angry flare in my chest. I told her there was no misunderstanding. They'd all chosen to exclude me from a family gathering on my anniversary, and now they were facing the consequences of taking my financial support for granted. She said I was being dramatic. Update 1. That evening, my uncle showed up at my door. He's always been the family mediator, the one who smooths things over when tensions run high. He looked tired and older than his 62 years as he asked if we could talk. We sat on my porch with beers, and he launched into his familiar peacekeeping routine. He acknowledged that the family had messed up by not including me in their dinner plans. He said everyone felt terrible about the mix-up, but he also said that cutting off financial support was an extreme reaction that was hurting people who depended on me. I asked him if he thought it was extreme to plan a family gathering and deliberately exclude one family member. His response was telling. He said my cousin had only invited people who were already free, and since I'd been working so much lately, nobody wanted to bother me. It was meant to be a casual thing, not a slight against me. I let that sink in for a moment. Then I asked why my wife was there if it was just for people who were already free. Why was my sister there when she'd been complaining all week about having no money for gas? Why was my cousin's girlfriend there when she wasn't even family? My uncle got quiet. He took a long drink of his beer and admitted that maybe there was more to it than just convenience. He said my cousin had been making comments lately about how I always acted like I was better than everyone else because I had money, how I made people feel small by always picking up checks and paying for things. That revelation hit me like a physical blow. I'd been supporting these people for years, not to show off or make them feel small, but because I loved them and wanted to help. I'd grown up poor, and when my business started succeeding, sharing that success with family felt natural and right. But apparently, my generosity had been breeding resentment instead of gratitude. My uncle tried to smooth things over, saying that my cousin didn't speak for everyone and that the family appreciated everything I'd done. But his words felt hollow. If they appreciated it so much, why had they found it so easy to exclude me? Why had none of them called to check on me when I didn't show up to their impromptu dinner? After he left, I sat alone on my porch until well past midnight, thinking about patterns I'd been too blind to see. Family gatherings where conversations stopped when I walked into a room. Jokes about my success that had gotten sharper over the years. The way people's attitudes changed when checks needed to be paid versus when fun was being had. I'd been so focused on being the provider that I'd missed becoming the outsider. Update 2. 3 days passed without me answering anyone's calls. My wife had grown cold and distant, making pointed comments about my stubbornness and how I was embarrassing her in front of her family. She reminded me that these people had raised her, had welcomed me into their circle when we started dating 10 years ago. But that phrase stuck with me, her family. When had I stopped being part of it and started being just the guy who paid bills? On Thursday morning, my business partner mentioned that my sister had called our office trying to reach me. She'd told our receptionist that there was a family emergency and that I needed to call home immediately. When I didn't return the call, she'd called back twice more, each time escalating the urgency of the supposed emergency. I realized this was their new strategy. If guilt and anger wouldn't work, they'd try fear. That afternoon, I got a text from my mom's neighbor. She was an elderly woman I'd helped with groceries a few times, and she was writing to let me know that my mom had been crying on her porch that morning. Mom had told her that the family was falling apart and that she didn't understand why everyone was fighting. That message almost broke my resolve. The idea of my mom crying because of my actions made my chest tight with guilt. But then I remembered that same mom laughing in the Instagram photo while I sat alone in an empty restaurant, and the guilt hardened into something else. I drove to my parents' house that evening. The porch light was off, which was unusual. My key still worked, and I let myself in to find my parents sitting at their kitchen table with a pile of bills spread between them. Dad's reading glasses were perched on his nose as he squinted at numbers, and Mom looked up at me with red-rimmed eyes. She asked where I'd been, why I hadn't answered their calls. She said they were scared and confused about all the bills and shut-off notices. They didn't understand what they'd done wrong. Dad was more direct. He said that regardless of whatever family drama was happening, they were old and needed help. He reminded me that they'd raised me, sacrificed for me, and deserved better than being abandoned in their time of need. I sat down at their table and asked them about the anniversary dinner. Did they remember getting the calendar invite? Did they remember confirming they would attend? Mom looked uncomfortable. She said she'd gotten confused about the dates, thought it was the following week. Dad said he'd never gotten any invite at all, which was interesting since his confirmation had come through clearly on my end. Then I asked them about the family dinner at Romano's. Had that been planned in advance? Dad's jaw tightened. He admitted that my cousin had been organizing family dinners for a few months, usually sending out group texts the day of. He said they were casual things, nothing formal, just whoever could make it. I asked why I was never invited to these casual family dinners. The silence that followed was deafening. Mom started crying again, and Dad looked everywhere except at me. Finally, Mom whispered that my cousin had said I was always too busy with work, that I'd probably just say no anyway. But it was Dad's next words that cut deepest. He said my cousin thought it would be nice for the family to spend time together without feeling like they owed anyone anything. Without feeling like charity cases. There it was. The truth I'd been dancing around for days. My financial support hadn't been making me a beloved family member. It had been making me a burden they felt obligated to include. Update 3. I left my parents' house that night with a clarity I hadn't felt in years. The money had been a wedge, not a bridge. My attempts to show love through financial support had somehow convinced my family that I thought they were inadequate, that I saw them as charity cases instead of equals. But the solution wasn't to go back to being their ATM. The solution was to find out who they really were when my wallet wasn't part of the equation. Over the weekend, I drafted a family email. I sent it to everyone. Parents, sister, uncle, cousin, wife. I explained that I'd realized my financial support had been creating unhealthy dynamics in our family relationships. I apologized for any feelings of obligation or inadequacy my help might have caused. I announced that I was stepping back from providing ongoing financial assistance so that we could rebuild our relationships on more equal footing. I also addressed the anniversary dinner directly. I explained how it felt to be excluded from family gatherings while simultaneously being expected to bankroll the family's needs. I said I needed time to process these feelings and figure out how to move forward. The responses came within hours. My sister sent a furious reply accusing me of emotional manipulation and financial abuse. She said I was punishing everyone for one mistake and that I was destroying the family out of pure spite. My cousin's response was more calculated. He acknowledged that there had been some miscommunications and hurt feelings on both sides. He suggested that we all sit down together and work things out like adults. But his tone felt patronizing, like he was talking to a child having a tantrum. My parents sent separate emails. Mom's was heartbroken and pleading. She begged me not to let money destroy our family. reminded me of all the holidays and celebrations we'd shared. Dad's was shorter and angrier. He said I was being vindictive and that cutting off support to prove a point was cruel and unnecessary. But it was my wife's response that surprised me most. She said she understood why I felt hurt and excluded. She admitted that she'd been uncomfortable with some of the family dynamics for a while, but hadn't known how to address them. She asked if we could talk about rebuilding things together as a team. For the first time in days, I felt a flicker of hope. However, that hope was short-lived. By Tuesday, I discovered that my wife had been having private conversations with other family members, essentially organizing their response to my email. She'd been coaching them on what to say to get me to restore the financial support. The woman who'd claimed to understand my position had been working behind my back to undermine it. That betrayal hurt worse than anything else. I confronted her about it, and she initially denied it before finally admitting that she thought I was making a mistake that would permanently damage family relationships. She said she was trying to save me from myself. I told her that if she wanted to save our marriage, she needed to choose a side. Was she my partner, or was she their intermediary? Did she see me as her husband, or as the family's financial resource? Her hesitation before answering told me everything I needed to know. Final update. It's been 3 months now since the anniversary dinner that changed everything. The automatic payment stayed canceled. Mom's power got shut off for 2 days before my uncle stepped up to help. Dad's phone service was interrupted for a week until he switched to a cheaper plan he could afford himself. My sister found a way to pay her own car insurance, though she had to downgrade her coverage. The family group chats went quiet. The casual dinner invitations stopped entirely. My cousin started posting passive-aggressive social media updates about family loyalty and how success changes people. My sister moved back in with our parents to help with expenses, which actually brought them closer together. My wife and I are in counseling. She's beginning to understand how isolated and used I felt, though it took several sessions before she stopped defending the family's behavior. We're working on rebuilding our relationship as equal partners rather than as benefactor and beneficiary. Some relationships didn't survive the transition. My cousin and I haven't spoken since that email exchange. My uncle has reached out a few times, but our conversations feel strained and artificial. My sister is slowly coming around, though she's still angry about having to restructure her life around a budget she can actually afford. But there have been positive changes too. My parents and I have started having real conversations about money and independence and respect. Dad got a part-time job at a hardware store, something he says he should have done years ago instead of letting pride keep him idle. Mom has started a small garden and talks about maybe selling vegetables at the farmer's market. Most importantly, I've learned to see the difference between supporting someone and enabling them, between being generous and being taken advantage of, between being loved for who you are and being tolerated for what you provide. The private dining room reservation was supposed to celebrate another year of marriage and family. Instead, it became the catalyst for understanding what those relationships were really worth. I still pay for things sometimes. When my parents' water heater broke last month, I helped with half the replacement cost. When my sister got that job interview, I loaned her gas money. But these are conscious choices now, not automatic obligations. They're gifts freely given, not payments extorted by expectation. The family that shows up now is smaller, but more genuine. The people who stayed did so because they wanted my company, not my checkbook. And surprisingly, that's made all the difference. Looking back, that empty private dining room wasn't the scene of my humiliation. It was the moment I finally saw clearly. Sometimes the most expensive lesson is the one that teaches you what's actually valuable. The phone calls have stopped. The desperate texts have ended. The family emergencies that required immediate financial intervention have mysteriously ceased. What remains is quieter, smaller, but infinitely more honest. And for the first time in years, when someone invites me to dinner, I know it's because they want me there, not because they want access to my wallet. That knowledge is worth every canceled payment, every difficult conversation, and every relationship that didn't survive the transition to honesty. Some prices are worth paying. Some bridges are worth burning. And sometimes, the family that remains after you stop buying their affection is the only family worth having.